Welcome to the SACNAS Role Models in STEM webinar series. Today we will feature Dr. Chris Cornelius from the Oneida Nation and the new Department Chair of Materials Science, Engineering, and the Wilkinson Chair at Iowa State University, who will be sharing his journey in academia. My name is Daryl Monto. I am an enrolled member of the Kiowa Tribe of Oklahoma and also of Apache and Comanche descent. I am also the SACNAS Native Initiatives Manager. Our program is really excited to be able to provide this type of programming for our Native American and Indigenous membership, and we will continue to work to bring more webinars and opportunities to our SACNAS community. Before we begin the webinar, I want to welcome our first-time attendees to SACNAS. We are an inclusive organization dedicated to achieving true diversity in STEM, where the field reflects the demographics of our country's population. As the nation's largest multicultural and multidisciplinary STEM diversity organization, SACNAS creates space where all members, partners, and staff feel they belong and can embrace and celebrate their intersectional identities. We invite you to join the SACNAS community at membership.sacnas.org. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our role model in STEM, Dr. Chris Cornelius. Dr. Cornelius' work investigates fundamental material interrelationships between structure, physical properties, and transport of natural and synthetic polymers, ionomers, hybrid organic, inorganic materials, and sol-gelled glasses. He teaches graduate and undergraduate thermodynamics, polymer physics, and transport phenomena. His combined research experience spans over 15 years as a faculty member, a senior administrator in academia, a national laboratory staff scientist, and an industrial engineer. He uses his unique perspectives to contribute to outreach efforts to promote student and faculty diversity to enrich the research, scholarship, and learning domains. In addition to teaching and research, he is also the editor of the Journal of Material Science. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Chris Cornelius.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I've been asked, how did I end up where I am today? And that's always an interesting question. And if I were to summarize it in just one word, it was because someone said no to me. And if we were looking at all of our lives, you would find that you'll have people that may not see the full potential of who you are or what you could become. And I always talk to students whenever I give talks, I'll mention this to them. I'll say, well, who could you be and who would you be? And I always give this example. I say, imagine if I took a family and I took the child from someone that was from Japan and I brought them to the United States, or the other way around. I took you from where you currently are, and when you're just a child, 2 months old, and you were raised in Japan, who would you be? What languages would you speak? Would you still be doing the things that you're doing today? And when I look at that, I ask that same question when we look at ourselves, what could we possibly be? And I remember my grandfather, he would see things in us and suggest things to you. And of course, as a child, you're going, first of all, you didn't speak to your grandfather, you just listened. But you would hear things and you would think, that's just so incredible. I don't think I could ever do it. But I got married very, very early, and I would not suggest this to anyone in their life. It's very hard, but I was married when I was in high school, so I had a child when I was 18 years old, and I was a grocery cashier, and my greatest aspiration was simply to become a produce manager. That's all I wanted at that point in time. And my thought process was, if I did that, then I would have enough money to take care of my family. That's all I could think of. And I grew up in Montana, which was very difficult, I would say, in some ways. They weren't used to people of different colors. They just weren't. In fact, in high school, you could find that there was only 3 Native families that were in my high school. And there was very few at all. I knew them all. So there was hardly any of us around. And so no one was quite used to us being different. And I remember that's all I wanted. And they permitted some other person besides me to be that produce manager. And I was so upset that happened. And I decided that I was going to join the Army. That way I could get money. So I had joined the Army in order to help me go to school, to help pay for school. And I learned several things along the way. I had learned internal strength within myself, what I could do, what I couldn't do. what I didn't want to do, and I knew I didn't want to be a follower, and that's what the Army was all about. It was primarily having people tell you what to do, and I knew I didn't want that. And so when I left and came out of finished my time within the reserve, out of that active duty time, I came back. I went to school. I went to Eastern Montana College. During that time, I had some good mentors that were pushing me to go even further. I had one woman that was involved in the science area at Eastern, and she said, you really needed to go to Montana State. And coming from Eastern Montana College was really small. I think we had 2,000, maybe only 1,000 students. It was very small. And then I went to Montana State, and to me, that was just a gigantic leap in size. At that time, Montana State had about 7,000 students. And when I was there, I had mentioned that when I graduated, which was in 94, which is somewhat embarrassing to say that I'm that old now, but when I graduated, I was, myself and two other people were probably the first Native Americans that graduated from Montana State. And that was probably, I'm sure there was probably less than 10 in total during that time. And so there was very few of us. In fact, I remember when I arrived there, one of the chemical engineering professors said to me when I went around, I met with the department chair, said I was coming. And then I went around to meet with some of the professors just to say hello, because I was a non-traditional student. And I felt that's what I needed to do. I remember this thermo teacher, which I now teach thermo, and I have a bunch of papers in thermo that I've written, and he didn't have any. But anyhow, I remember him saying to me, we've never had anyone like you graduate here before. And I remember hearing that, and I was so angry. I said, how dare this person say this to me? Basically, he was telling me, you're not going to make it. And of course, that just ran against the grains of who I was. And I said, no, I will make it. And that was difficult for me because there are so few Native Americans at Montana State, and even fewer people in engineering. And so, you had to create your own mentors and your own people to work with. And you learned how to make people work with you. And unfortunately for me, which also was fortunate, is many of the students never wanted to work with me because I wasn't white. But what I found out is, and this is what all students should remember, faculty in an academic setting, they're there to serve you, and you can make them do that role. And so I would actually turn my professors that I was being taught by into the people that would be my study group. I would prepare notes, prepare problems, make sure I was well prepared, and I would go and talk to them, and I'd make them answer my questions that I had outside of class. And in doing so, I was able to do well at the university, and I graduated, had a bunch of jobs. I ended up working for 3M and then later our first Dow Chemical and then 3M. And during that time, I had a bug in me, which was I always wanted to get a PhD. And this I fault to a man that literally looked like Fred Flintstone. And I worked in his lab for 3 years. He was an organic chemistry teacher. His name was Bradford Mundy, and he was from the Northeast, and he was just so funny. But he saw things in me that I didn't see. And he was always telling me, you need to go into academia. And what he actually told me was, you need to teach. And of course, at that time, I was thinking, that's insane. I just can't be a teacher. It's not something I want to do. But that was a bug that was in me. And when I was at 3M, I remember this is when I had my wife and I had our fourth child. And he was 2 months old, my son Daniel. And I was deliberating between leaving 3M and getting another job within 3M, which is a polymer area, which I really wanted to work in. And I was later told by 3M technical people that they couldn't offer me that job because I didn't have any experience or background training in polymers. And so that was really frustrating to me. So it was between that or going to graduate school. And I had applied to a bunch of places, and my wife put a bunch of requirements on it where we could live and couldn't live. And so I had offers from University of Michigan, University of Texas. And so the different places that were big cities, and my wife didn't want to live in a big city. She said it couldn't be a big city. And so I looked closer, and I found that Virginia Tech wasn't a big city. And if you've ever been to Blacksburg, it's about 30,000 people that live there. It's a nice small little town, beautiful community, great school. And at the time, it was one of the top 3 polymer schools in the nation. So I went there, and it was a wonderful experience. It was so different than undergraduate experience. People are from everywhere in the world, as well as different parts of the United States, and you get to interact with them, learn from them, their experiences, their challenges that they've had in life, and they become lifelong friends. And it was through those actions that really put me on a path towards thinking about eventually going into academia. And to be honest, I didn't even know, other than what industry was, because I had worked in industry. I had never known that there is such thing as national laboratories. And at an ACES conference, I was sitting there, and I remember overhearing a man named Lawrence Brown talking to another candidate about coming to Sandia National Labs and how it was a great place in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I never even knew what a national lab was. And of course, I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm getting a PhD." And at that time, there was only one other PhD native person, her name is Nancy Jackson, and she was at Sandia National Labs. And so I went and interviewed, and it was a great experience. I said yes, and I became the second person at Sandia National Laboratory to have a PhD that was native. Later, we inspired another person to do that, and we hired a couple others. So I think right now there might be 4 people there, but it changed dramatically. And during that time, I learned how to mentor. My job was to build research, and as talked earlier, I do a lot of polymer science, a lot of electrochemistry. So I did fuel cells and separations, and so I hired a lot of postdocs and trained them. And during the time of training of them, I realized that teaching is really important. And the reason it is because when you see a dichotomy between hiring somebody that's not from the United States, which I was not able to do because I needed someone that could come in that could have a clearance, so secret or top secret, to be able to come in. And the only person that I could hire really was a domestic student. But the domestic students, their background was weaker than that of someone from outside. And that really bothered me. And the reason it did was I knew that these students that are coming for the US, they had such enormous potential, but for some reason along their path from K through 12, through their training in college, to when they finally got their PhD, to now they're working with me, something happened along the way. And that something was, somebody didn't challenge them, somebody didn't push them, somebody didn't help stretch them to become more than what they were. And so I decided at that point that I was going to go back to academia and try to start with students at the beginning of their careers instead of at the end when I'm trying to fix them. I wanted to be at that part. And so I've been doing this since 2008 now, working with students and working with others. And along that path, I've had some wonderful experiences that led me to where I am today. And what pleases me more than anything is, sometimes when you meet people, they never really know what you're capable of or who you are and what you've done. But what's really fun is when you've published and they see your papers and they see your work, they reference your work, and then they meet you in person and they don't realize, wow, I never would have linked you and that paper and that research together. Or I never would have linked you with that student that now is doing such and such somewhere, that you helped develop them to do what they are doing today. And again, that goes all the way back to the very beginnings when I was telling you about this organic chemistry professor at Montana State seeing me that looked like Fred Flintstone and just pushing me and saying, I just know that you could be a great professor, that you should consider going into academia. You can help so many people. And that's what he said to me. And of course, at the time I was thinking, no, I can't go to 4 more years of school. I can't do this anymore. And now, after so many years, I'm doing that. And it led to where I am today. And I was just recently offered a position at Iowa State University to be the department chair to help others. And I'm very, very excited about that. And my hope is when we look at mentors and we think of basketball and baseball and we see people that are mentors, that, in this future of time, we're going to see more and more Indigenous people coming forward to become mentors to others, to be examples that they too will now far succeed the things that, I may do in the next 10 and 20 years from now. And we'll all be looking at them, like Billy Mills winning a gold medal. We'll be winning gold medals in the achievements that we do in academia and beyond. So I'm very excited to be able to be invited to share with you briefly about my little path. We all have stories. I'm always humbled to share mine. I always think that, some others have done far more than I have done, and I just feel fortunate to where I am today. So I'm going to stop there, and you'll have my contact information. If you ever want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to correspond with you and share, maybe mentor, or maybe just share a laugh. And so with that, I'm going to stop.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, for taking time out of your schedule, to talk about your journey. But before I let you go, I do have a couple of questions for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So my first question is, how much do you feel the landscape of higher education has changed since you began as a faculty? And what, in your opinion, lies ahead for STEM programs?
Oh, how much has it changed? One of the things I've seen, because when you work in industry and you've worked in a national lab and you work with others that are in the US in different places, the idea of collaborating with each other is quintessential to being successful. But academia has always had this idea that I'm the lone person in my pillar of activity, and for me to be successful, I have to be me. Not we, but me, just me, right? Being selfish in what you do. You still have to do some of that, but there's been a change in how you are recognized for your efforts. And there's more of a larger collaboration of synergy amongst each other and how you work. People talk about this being collaborative in nature and how you go for as a much larger team. And I think that's really important to do. And it's being recognized far more than it was, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Everything's more in an inclusive way, which is good, right? Because that's how the world works, right? Is diversity of thought, diversity of action, all these things then come together to make a much more holistic picture and to solve those things in a much more holistic way. And I think that's what I've seen changing over time. Compositionally, I've also seen a lot of change. When I reflected back, I did serve on Montana State Engineering Board a few years ago, and it was kind of fun to go back after, like I said, I graduated in 94 and I went back and I was serving in 2006, 14, 16 for 2 years during that time. So, that much time had gone by, almost, what was that, 94? Yeah, 20 years had gone by. So at that time, the ACES chapter and the group Advanced by Choice, which served a lot of minorities, there probably was 4 of us, 4, maybe 6. Now go back at least 30, and you just go, wow, that is huge for that kind of change. And you see, instead of a reactionary response by administrators and seeing the value of that, you see a change in dialogue and vocabulary and action towards trying to help them. And this is what's needed, right? Because if you talk about a larger society, you have to take all parts of it. And if you neglect it, then all the issues that we see today are just going to get worse. And that's what's needed. And so that's what I'm seeing change. And it's nice to see that. It's nice that we're, starting to get a voice in these discussions. It's good. I mean, we need this, right? What I see too, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, but I've seen a lot of movement to where you'll check the box and you say, well, I've hired a white woman and now I've now diverse. It's like, you are not diverse. That is not diverse. Diverse considers the whole composition. And so that's been a careful fight that I'm trying to get others to, like, maybe you say it, not me, because it's needed, right? Because you have to say, you don't get a pass just because you did this.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I understand. So my next question, how
Okay.
would you encourage Native American Indigenous faculty, postdocs, and students to embrace their culture and heritage while working or going to school?
Hmm. You know, it's different in every level of this.
Mhm.
So if I were tenure track and I was trying to get tenure, when I talk to people about this, I say, check the box, do what's required to get tenure first, and then focus on being more inclusive, right? Or being, yeah, trying to bring in more things that you now have control over. And the reason I say that, I remember one of my lab mates, she was Hispanic. She was part of SHIP and she had done all this outreach activity. And she thought, because I remember talking to her about this, I said, you need to finish. I said, you have to finish. But she was so involved in that external stuff as a graduate student that she never finished her PhD.
Mm.
And so you have to really be careful about balancing these two things. What's your first mission? Is it to do the outreach, to help others, or is it first to get that PhD or get that degree and then do that? I would argue first you need to take care of yourself to make sure you achieve the thing that you said you're going to do, because otherwise you're going to be no good out there because you can't help. And so I think that's what you need to do with some level of balance between them. You know, all of us are individuals and we have different types of family interaction and extended family. And I would say you have to try to balance it. But I would say your number one role is you taking care of yourself, you succeeding. And then when you are able to achieve certain things along the way that you're secure in that position, then you can help far more. I mean, if you look at my career, I was not really able to help as much as I am now.
Mhm.
Part of the reason is because, I needed to get tenure. Or before that was, I needed to be successful in funding wise when I was at Sandia, because otherwise, we were 100% soft money. And if I didn't have money, there's no way I was going to have a job. So that came first. And then I could do that. So that's what I would say as advice. It's a delicate balance. I mean, it's not binary, it's not 0, 1. It's some balance between those, but you have to look at you yourself first, though. That's what I would say.
Sure. All right. Great. Thank you. And then my last question, this is more for our students. This is such an unprecedented time that we are in. And I know that it's brought a lot of challenges to our students. And so do you have any words of advice for our Native Indigenous students as they're finishing out their year and looking ahead?
I always think of hope. Some of us may not, we have a strong belief as Indigenous people, right? Whether you're Christian, not Christian, it doesn't really matter. We always have had a belief, and hope is something that if you can maintain, right, the faith in that, you'll do fine. I mean, I think, right, you consider yourself versus someone that might be atheist and believes in nothing. It's like, what is the hope, and what do you hold on to allow you to finish? Something, right? If there's just an end and there's nothing more, then sometimes that can be really hard, right? Especially when things are incredibly difficult, because it'll all get difficult. I've gone through very difficult times, but it was in my faith that allowed me to continue forward and say, there's others that are looking out for me that's going to help me finish, and I can do this, right? I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to lose hope that there's something there for me and for us.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again, Dr. Cornelius, for taking time out of your schedule to share and give this presentation. We really appreciate it. And for our SACNAS community, please stay tuned. We will have more webinars coming up. And you can always find upcoming and previous webinars to view at sacnas.org/webinars. We hope that you all enjoyed today's webinar, and we will see you next time. So take care, everyone.
Thank you.